The New England Patriots, their offseason in 60 seconds. Said goodbye to Bill Belichick, who's the best, most decorated football coach in NFL history. That seems notable. Replaced him with Jerod Mayo, their handpicked successor. Alex Van Pelt comes in as the offensive coordinator. DeMarcus Covington, who was previously on the staff, elevated to defensive coordinator. Used the third overall pick on Drake Maye. In-house extensions for like 17 players. Christian Barmore, Kyle Duggar, Ramondre Stevenson, Hunter Henry, Jabril Peppers, Devon Gottschall, Jelani Tavai, and David Edwards also kept around. They retained Mike Onwenu on a huge deal, Kendrick Bourne on a huge deal, Anthony Jennings on a 3-year deal, brought in Antonio Gibson and Jacoby Brissett on short-term deals in free agency, traded Matthew Judon, traded Mac Jones. Mac Wilson goes to the Cardinals. Trent Brown goes to the Bengals. Other notable draft picks, Jalen Polk in the 2nd round, Caden Wallace, offensive tackle, in the 3rd round. Blue chip check-in for the Patriots. How many did you have?
I don't know about any.
It's 0. I think it's 0.
In my mind, the closest was Christian Barmore when he's healthy, but we're obviously not going to get him this year. So it's probably 0. And they've got a couple of nice players too. I don't want to say that this is like a dumpster roster, but I probably couldn't get there to blue chip with
They've got a lot of good players on defense, good players, but I don't know how many elite players they have. Kyle Duggar is a good player. Some of the guys they have in the secondary are good players. The linebackers are solid players. They've got nice depth pieces along the defensive line, but I don't think any of them are blue chip players, and I don't think it's offensive to say that.
It's always been a better than the sum of their parts unit. And so even if you have some guys who are like Pro Bowlers, there weren't a whole lot of, holy shit, we have to play against this guy type of guys.
I think Onwenu probably deserves mention, like on the 2nd tier. He's a very good offensive lineman, but again, I don't think anybody rises to the blue chip level. What significant question marks does this depth chart have? You can keep this short.
Where do you want to start, man? Like pretty much the entire roster outside of, I mean, they've got some good stuff on defense, but pretty much
the defense is solid.
Offense.
The defense doesn't have that many glaring holes.
It's the offense, like every spot. And you could even say, they went and drafted a quarterback in the top 10, and Jacoby's okay, but those are tough spots to be in year 1 of that situation. So it's not great.
Most of the offensive line and the pass catchers. So everything that's not the quarterback about the offense, I think, is probably a hole or a question mark on this roster. The defense, after trading Judon, like what does the edge group look like? Does Josh Uche have to play more? What do you get from Keon White? Like, I think that's the biggest question on defense, but all of those are mostly rooted on the other side of the ball. What do you watch in the first month of the season with this Patriots team?
This is a little more abstract than a lot of my other answers for this question, but to me, it's just, does this still feel like a Patriots defense? Because a lot of what happened with Belichick is, obviously he's a great play caller and he knows just the finer coaching points and all this stuff and when to call coverages and all these other things. But so much of it was they just had an attitude about them that everyone was going to play fast. Everybody was going to do their job. Everybody was going to hit and tackle. And I'm just wondering how much of that energy can they maintain? And for 2 reasons. One, obviously, losing Bill Belichick and having to go to a different guy, even if I have faith in Jerod Mayo and he's obviously handpicked for the system, it's still a question mark. And then 2, how much value do you even get out of that when you no longer have some of your star players? Like, you don't have Judon anymore. Christian Barmore is going to miss the season. So how much of that like energy and attitude and play style, how much does that actually lift when you don't have a couple of those real linchpins that give you some oomph?
I'm with you on this, though. I think maintaining that sort of feel across regimes is important. And one of the reasons it's so important is because they've retained all these guys. Like, the core is going to be the core because you've signed all these guys back. Barmore's back. Godshaw's back. Some of the guys you have on the edge are back. The linebackers are under contract. The corners you just drafted are under contract. The safeties you've signed to extensions. So this is going to be the defense. They have a ton of financial flexibility, but you've committed to a lot of these pieces. So if this doesn't feel like a top 10-ish defense, or at least a top 10-ish defense when you add back in some of that star power like you mentioned, then some of the bets you've made about what sort of team you want to be over the next 2 to 3 years were the wrong bets.
Yes, I 100% agree. Again, I have some faith it'll work, and I will say they have a lot of their attitude guys still there. Like, they lost their stars, obviously. Jawan Bentley's still there. Jelani Tavai, Kyle Duggar, Anthony Jennings. That dude sets a mean edge. If you haven't seen him, like, they have the guys there who are willing to still hit you and have that attitude. It's just, like I said, some of the star power is gone.
I want to see what a guy like Keon White is in year two. Like, do they have some of those younger pieces? Like, is Christian Gonzalez a star? Like, do you have maybe some of those stars hiding in plain sight that make us feel a little bit different about this unit by the end of the year, even without Judon, even without Christian Barmore?
I think that's 100% right. Keon White has theoretically the attitude. He's got the attitude, he's got the violence. We just got to see it a little bit more in action.
I'm kind of with you. Like, I think it would probably be something offensive oriented, but the fact that the first month is probably going to be Jacoby Brissett makes me a little bit less excited about watching the offense over the first month. And that doesn't say anything about Jacoby Brissett. He has been a fine quarterback in the NFL when given the opportunity, but I'm not overly excited about watching him with this supporting cast on that side of the ball. So I assume it'll be mostly focused on the defense.
Yeah, Jacoby is a nice player, but like we've also seen this movie and we know that none of the other supporting characters around him are all that interesting or high level. So yeah.
What's keeping you up at night with this Patriots team?
I mean, most of the offense, like we said, but this offensive line, I just don't know if they can pass protect. Run game wise, I think they might actually be okay. I think interior, they actually have some dudes who can really move people around. Obviously, Nwenu, City So can move people in the ground game. Andrews is a good center when when he's healthy and playing. Even Layden Robinson, who's a rookie for them, a rookie guard, he was kind of moving people in the preseason. So I don't know if he's going to end up playing at any point, but they have dudes who can move people in the run game, pass protection wise. This could get really ugly really fast, and I don't know how it's going to get better.
I'm taking it wider than that. What's keeping me up at night is this going to be like a Bryce Young-esque support system for Drake Maye? Are we going to get to a point by week 8 where no one can get open, they have no juice at the pass catching spots, and the offensive line is a total disaster? And I don't think that's like a pessimistic view on how this can turn out. You have all these questions along the line. For Darian Lowe as your starting left tackle, which, okay. Chuck Okorafor, you paid $4 million a year as your starting right tackle. Even if you're optimistic about the interior, because Andrews is pretty good, and you like Onwenu, I'm still very worried about like 3 of the 5 spots along the offensive line. And look at the pass catchers. Bourne is starting the season injured. Hunter Henry is currently hurt and is going to miss probably at least the first game. So now we're talking about like a starting trio of receivers. That's Tyquan Thornton, rookie Jalen Polk, and who's the third one that I'm forgetting?
Like Demario Douglas, probably.
Demario Douglas. Okay, so
Yeah.
it's Pop Douglas, Jalen Polk, and Tyquan Thornton. And I know that Tyquan Thornton has looked good in training camp, and people are excited about Tyquan Thornton, but this just feels dicey to me. We were already shooting for the middle with the pass catching spots in the best case scenario. And now you've removed Bourne and Henry for potentially a period of time when they could have been the reliable guys that you were trotting out there. So the floor for 10 of the 11 spots combined on the offense feels about as low as it did with Carolina last year. And that is concerning to me.
So I'm of two minds on this. First, in terms of the non-quarterback players, I basically agree. It's a bad roster. You can even look at like the Jared Goff Rams were pretty close to being this level of bad, like his first year. Do you know what the difference between having the Jared Goff and Bryce Young rookie seasons versus having a Drake Maye or Josh Allen type of rookie season? It's the talent at the quarterback position.
There is no denying that. And that's why I don't think it'll be a Carolina Panthers 2023-esque outcome, but I do think the supporting cast can be in that general range.
Yeah, I won't fight you on that one.
What are you excited about watching with this year's Patriots team?
I mean, Drake Maye, man, fireworks show. He's going to be, I don't know how good it's going to be. I don't know what type of numbers he can put up in this offense, but it is going to be fun whenever they put him in there. And I really think, some people are hemming and hawing about like, oh, he's not the week 1 starter. And like Jaden Daniels is going to be all this other stuff. I think the Patriots and Jerod Mayo understand that putting him behind this offensive line for 17 weeks might kill him. And so they're going to give him a month or two to not have to go play behind that offensive line for a little bit and not create some scar tissue. But I think when
we don't know that for sure now, because Jerod Mayo, he's handled this very strangely over the last like 48 hours or so. So today he came out, we're recording this on Wednesday at like 5 p.m. Eastern. He came out and said, I know who the starting quarterback is. I'm not going to tell you guys until tomorrow. So
this is how you know he's a Patriots coach, by the way.
We will know sometime after we record this, but on the day that the show is released, who the day 1 starting quarterback is for the Patriots. I would not be surprised if they followed your logic and thought it would be better to feed Jacoby Brissett to opposing defenses for the first month of the season. What did you think of Drake Maye in the preseason?
Dude, he was good. I thought he was really good, man. So there were a couple of reasons I thought he looked good. The first one to me is I think people really, really misunderstood what his pocket presence was in college. I think they saw some of the sliding and some of the weird stuff that he was willing to do and some of his janky footwork as being, oh, he just doesn't know what's going on and he's doing this crazy stuff in the pocket. If you actually watched him, he was sliding away from stunts, moving away from loopers, doing all this stuff, anticipating blitzes. So that's why he was moving in the pocket. You go see him in the preseason, he's doing all the same stuff against real NFL defenses. And I was like, okay, he's going to be just fine in this sense. And then footwork wise, I actually thought his drop back footwork was not perfect. He still had a couple of oopsies. Like, though, I think his first flat route he threw in the second preseason game, he like skied it over Javon Baker's head almost. And so he still has some oopsies, but it's more consistently clean than it was at UNC. And so if that's where we're starting in his first preseason action, I think by year 2, year 3, he's going to be fine.
To me, it felt like watching Drake Maye in college in ways both good and bad, right? And I think it's what Drake Maye is, and this has been true throughout the draft process. He's whatever you want him to be. Like, if you want to talk yourself into some of the big plays and you want to talk yourself into the pocket presence and the mobility as well, like his ability to get himself out of bad spot because of the ways that he moves and like avoiding sacks, things like that, he does that very, very well. But at the same time, like, there are times when he's running into pressure unnecessarily. There are times when he's just like jittering around the pocket in ways that make no sense and then just like sky mailing a throw over somebody's head. Like, that does happen. And I think it's just a matter of you trying to decide how much of that matters compared to the good things that you see. How much of that matters compared to him sliding up in the pocket and delivering an absolute laser on a crosser. The fact that the presence seems pretty good and the physical talent is excellent, I'm willing to kind of overlook some of those moments where you're like, what the fuck just happened? And that's going to go on every once in a while with him. But I think that this was pretty much what you would come to expect if you watched him in college.
My take on some of his plays where he maybe does walk himself into pressure, and it does happen, I'm not going to deny it, or where he maybe throws from a platform he didn't even need to, and then he ends up
Yes.
missing a
Yes.
throw.
Like, why are you running into the offensive line and throwing this ball on like a full sprint?
I just think he's one of those guys where he's always trying to do the hardest thing. And you even still see this today from Matthew Stafford. And I just kind of think Drake's brain works that way. And so obviously getting to the level of Matt Stafford is going to take a long time. And that's really hard. But he just has that like wiring to him. And when you have the physical talent that you have and some of the almost numb ability to just play under pressure, that's a guy I want to bet on.
I would much rather need refinement than I would much rather need to refine a guy than need to instill him with a level of aggressiveness, right? Like that's where I am with Drake Maye. I would much rather have to rein a guy in than have to push him forward. And when you watch him play, I think that's exactly what you're getting. The most important supporting character in your mind on this year's Patriots team is?
I mean, pick any offensive lineman outside of David Andrews and Michael Onwenu, literally any of those guys. Or also, you mentioned him earlier, Keon White. He didn't put up numbers last year, but if you watch Keon White on film, he's kind of got some pop to him, and he's a guy who actually did a decent job of crushing the pocket, kind of in that mold, like almost the John Franklin Myers. That he's a little bit smaller than that, I think, but that same type of body type. So if Keon White can take a step, especially now with Judon out of the building, that could be huge.
Can any of the receivers break out? Like, can any of these guys, by the time we get to the middle of the season, be like, oh, I kind of like that guy? If it's Tyquan Thornton, if it's Jalen Polk, if it's Demario Davis, whatever. Because that didn't really happen. I keep referring back to last year's Panthers because that's just in my mind. And that's the fear I have here. The fact that it was Adam Thielen and we knew it wasn't real. Like, can it be somebody that is under the age of 32 where we think that there's actually an upward trajectory happening here? If that's the case, I would feel much better about the state of this offense. And the other guy I throw in there is Scott Peters, their offensive line coach. Like, can he get workable play from this group by the end of the year as a first-year offensive line coach? If he can be like a lifter and a multiplier for that group in the way that we've seen with other offensive line coaches in the past, I think that would go a long, long way.
Of the receivers, is there one you would like to bet on? Would you like
Polk.
to?
I hope Polk is good.
Yeah. That would be the one. That would be the one.
I would hope he's good. You drafted him in the second round. Like, you would really hope that guy becomes like a plus starter for you. This team has like $100 million in cap space next year. Like, I don't even know what the number is, but it's absurd. They will be able to afford whatever receiver they want if that guy's willing to come play in New England. So whether that's T. Higgins, whether that's Brandon Ayuk, whoever it ends up being, this group should get an injection of talent some way, somehow over the next year. But if Polk can be like your number 2, established, that you feel really good about as part of that equation, I think that would be a decent outcome.
Yeah, that makes sense. We're getting ahead of ourselves, but you mentioned T. Higgins. If we could get 2 ball winners like that for a guy like Drake, who's just going to throw it at people no matter what, yeah, we're cooking.
I mean, this team was begging Brandon Ayuk essentially to come there, and he refused to do it. But I think that they'll probably be in a pretty similar position this offseason. What counts as a successful season in your mind for these New England Patriots?
Drake Maye coming out of it alive on the other end and having some of the flashes that lead you to believe that he's the guy. And then the defense, kind of like we said, maintaining that attitude and like top 8-ish play. I think now without some of the stars, it's going to be hard to do top 2 or top 3 or wherever I put him in the show. But top 8 or 10 is probably pretty reasonable.
Yeah, I think May comes out on the other side looking like a guy, and you retain some of that defensive DNA where you can just rely on that sort of play year in and year out as you figure out the offense. Even if you win 3 games this year, if you get those flashes and you get that kind of proof of concept defensively, that's all that matters. Being the worst team in the league and getting the number 1 pick, that's okay. Like that's okay. Take it from me. Take it from a guy who roots for a team that did that and now is in a much better spot because of it. The wins and losses are not always the most important thing. It's about which direction the arrow is pointed, and do you have a pathway to a difference-making quarterback? And I think the answer to that could be yes by the end of this season, even if this ends up being the worst team in the NFL.
I think that's absolutely spot on. You go spend that first overall pick on a Travis Hunter, on a Mykel Williams, somebody like that. Maybe one of the tackles. There's a million of them, I think, in this next class. So,
or you get to a place where Carson Beck looks really good.
Hey,
really wants Carson Beck, whoever it happens to be. Name your
for a trade. Okay, for a second, I thought this was a Drake Maye thing.
No. You're in a position now where you have your quarterback, hopefully, and if you have the number 1 pick, and there's a quarterback that's worth chasing, you can trade that thing for a king's ransom, and it puts you in a pretty good spot.
Yeah. Okay. Now you've got me. I had to recalibrate there for a second, but I'm good.